Same one smoke again? Yeah. Meat and dinner. All right.
Morning, Glenn. How are you, bud?
Morning.
I don't think Glenn.
So we're gonna end up pulling this over. We'll do a little intro. Yeah, right there, perfect. And then we'll pull you in.
Do you need me to scoot over?
We will. We'll bring him in.
Okay.
The audience likes that. 2:15. I hope my chewing is.
We got five. 5 people.
6 over here.
All right, you're closer to busy though. Cigar 101. We need a theme song.
You ready, Pop?
Yeah. I know this.
Are you're on ours? You know you're on Cigar Newbies as well, right? You want to go to the ICC
What do you want me to do?
channel? Go to ICC.
Oh.
What's up, Anthony White? Anthony White. What do we got? 1:30.
Hold on.
Oh, yeah.
So, ICC,
Yes. 1:20.
not on Dogs of ICC.
Little Popeye in me. I'm gonna start looking at. Chase, what's happening? So happy I made it to that one. He's so happy he's typing all caps. You're looking at it over there?
He's in.
Beans for lunch? Oh,
Larry.
I moved the chair.
I'm a little concerned what's going on up there in LaGrange, Missouri, since we're apparently the entertainment
Yep. Yep.
in LaGrange.
I'm a little nervous as well. 33, 32. Have you thought about what we're going to talk about?
Hold on just a second. Thought about it.
Good. I
Yep.
like that.
In.
Biz has no idea what he's stepping into.
No.
Dude's just in.
Robert's here. Jeremy is here. George is here. Robert's here. You're not just going to do an impromptu, go straight to the pipe thing, are you?
You're taking away the whole 3, 2, 1.
Boom. Here we go. Buckle up.
It's Tuesday,
It's Cigars 101.
and this is everything you need to know about Cubans. Fake
Everything.
Cubans,
Fake Cubans.
Real
Cubans. Cigars that taste better than most Cubans. All that stuff.
and why. So if you have questions, don't forget to ask them because we are closely
Tonight.
monitoring this.
Tonight is a very interactive night.
Yes. And we will also murder a cigar
Yes.
of this one. We're going to sacrifice this cigar. Don't worry. It's
Cuban.
fake as hell.
Yeah.
And we're also going to run through some of the packaging elements. So let's just start here.
Yeah.
While people are going through, yes, you
Come
can
on
read.
in. Share this with some friends.
That's a great idea.
There's a lot of people. Here's the thing. We do Cigar 101s. We do Hottest Spot Fake Cubans, usually as we start to enter vacation season.
And that's where it is. And what I was saying before you rudely interrupted was...
I wasn't even listening, though.
I know you
Okay.
weren't. Because you could read books, you could go onto the forums, and you can do exactly this and sit and watch this because it's valuable.
Books.
But you really learn about Cuban cigars and about the Cuban process in the world and the culture by going there. So will you just give a quick preface of why you know about Cuban cigars, how you learned about them, and with whom you learned?
Well, I actually had the opportunity to visit Cuba for about 7 or 8 days. I went to the Habanos Festival. You just look like a dickweed with that thing.
I'm trying to learn, man. Are
Corn
we frozen
cob.
over there?
No, I don't think so. Just you lighting a pipe looks like you're frozen in time. So
I'm going to set this aside.
we are actually going to start offering pipes at ICC now that we have people here that know what pipes are.
I am curious if any people out there are interested in pipes.
Yes.
Because it's kind of the same thing, but way different.
So we got Sydney
you, guys.
in, we got Yvonne in, we got Jeremy. So tonight we're going to talk about Cuba and fake Cubans.
Tell us about the time you went to Cuba, please, in a nutshell.
I went to Cuba a couple years ago with, as Nelson Alfonso's guest, the owner of Atabey. His family actually started the Byron line in 1850. Byron and Atabey, the only two registered trademark cigars that are sold in the United States under the Cuban trademark, which is kind of an interesting thing. But while in Cuba, had an opportunity to go to several of the factories. The beauty of being the guest of Nelson Alfonso in Cuba, that would be like being the guest of Rocky Patel at a trade show in the United States. The dude is legendary, and he is extremely well known and got all of the backstage passes to all of the factories that we wanted to go to, including the factory that creates the Cohiba Bejique, which is a very, very popular cigar.
And a cigar you are going to see on your vacations. And if you go into a cigar lounge or anywhere that sells cigars and you see a cigar that sits somewhere in the $100 to $200 range, chances are they're going to say it's a Bejique or it is a real Bejique.
Yeah, there's a number of things to look at, and we're going to talk about some of the indicators that go into identifying a fake Cuban, and we've got some real boxes here, we've got a fake box here, we got some fake cigars, but we're going to talk about some things that are important because there is kind of a checklist of things that you want to monitor as you go to evaluate these cigars that'll help you determine whether it's fake. The problem is a lot of the boxes check the check marks, but they've gotten really good at faking the checks. So that's a big part of it. One of the big things that I learned about in Cuba is the amount of fake Cubans in Cuba. And everybody's got a story.
So how do you fake a Cuban cigar in Cuba?
Well, let's identify what is fake. This cigar without a label on it is a cigar. If you don't know where it comes from, what it is, or whatever, it might be worth $1. It might be worth $2. In Cuba, it might be worth 15 cents. As soon as you slap a reputable brand on it, and you throw Cohiba on it, or you throw Hoya on it, or you throw Punch on it, or whatever the case may be, at that point, you're kind of expecting, if it's a Monte Cristo number 2, which this box here is, Monte Cristo number 2, you're expecting a $22 to $25 cigar.
Yep.
So does that 5-pack that the guy's trying to sell you while you're in Acapulco on the cruise, that walks up to you and says, "Hey man, you probably know how to say it better.
Take you to the moon."
Take you to the moon. No, that's different. That's not Coke. The cigar. That's Coke, right? So,
but it's the same guy. They take you to the moon.
Oh, it's the same guy. But he's got the 5-pack with the glass top, so you can see all the cigars.
Big question: is there a Cuban cigar brand that does glass tops?
0. 0.00.
Here's question number 2 coming from Mark Meyer.
Yeah.
Is a Cuba Cuban?
No, it's not. But Mark, but thanks for asking. No, that's actually a real sweet cigar made by our friends at Drew Estates in Nicaragua.
If you have questions about Cubans, throw them in.
Ask questions.
So first and foremost, the packaging is exceedingly important. And
very.
One thing that they're known for, that Cuban cigars and Cuban manufacturers are known for, is the quality of their production, of their printing and labels.
Printing. There's a number of factors on the cigar itself, and we could jump into this. But
let's jump.
One of the things I hang out in a group that's called like International Cigar Smoker Community. It's like 40,000 people that are in this group. But a guy posted up a picture that was very proud of the fact that he had just gotten this box of Monte Cristos. And I made a comment on there. There's about 4 red flags that I can see from your one picture. And the amount of people that started going, well, what are they? What are they? What are they? What are they? We really want to know. And identified some of those red flags that popped out. Number 1 on the box that I saw that was online was the box was wrapped in cellophane. They don't actually, and it was loosely wrapped in cellophane. They didn't even shrink wrap it all the way. So that's telltale sign number 1. They're not going to wrap the box in cellophane. The reason that they did that is when you're at a cigar store in somewhere in Mexico or wherever, and they're saying these are Cubans, they don't want you to actually have the ability to open that lid, so they throw the cellophane on it to say, don't break the seal on this, but they don't want you to get inside the cigar.
And another thing that you want to pay attention to is oftentimes they have their boxes of cigars that are sitting on the front. They'll have a box that's open, but then they'll put a secondary box that's sitting there behind it or next to it. What you really want to be careful about is the show box that's open. They'll usually pull that. They may have one real box that sits there, and that box may be their show box, but they'll use a very fine blade, so you can't see the fact that the seal has been broken and they've taken all of the cigars out of there
and stuck the junk in
there. So you really want to pay attention if you're cruising or whatever. I suppose it's going to be years before cruises, but when you're there and you're in a place where you can buy them, make sure that seal is not broken.
That's critical. But what we want to do is we'll talk about some of the identifiers that are on the box, and then we'll also talk a little bit, and I'm only saying this so that you guys can remind me, but let's also talk about the fact that there are some red flags when doing business with overseas online retailers that are big time red flags.
That's good when it comes to how do you buy Cubans. I don't know. I'm sure we can actually talk about that legally, but Chase actually has a question. Why are some wrapped in plastic, and why are some cigars not wrapped in plastic in the boxes?
Is this an in general question or a Cuban question?
I think this is an in general question.
In general, you'll see people that will wrap cigars in cellophane, and that's really to protect that cigar while in transit. The cellophane is porous, it'll breathe, so you don't have to worry about necessarily taking it out. Brandon actually talked a little bit about his application at home. He has a tendency to kind of rustle through cigars in his humidor in order to find one. So to protect your cigar from getting a nick or a bump, leave it in the cellophane. So that's okay. There are some manufacturers that don't. One of those is Padron. Padron their cigars are box press cigars. They're made very, very well, so they fit in there perfectly. They're not going to bounce around and roll around. Exactly. But they're also box press, so they're sitting in there pretty tight. Round cigars will oftentimes have a gap, so you're actually protecting the cigar with cellophane.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Well said. Well said. Now, once you look underneath the cellophane, let's talk Cubans here. Some big indicators of what is going to be a Cuban and what is not. And I want to show you this is what is not a Cuban. And there are a couple reasons we may say it's not a Cuban. Well, predominantly, maybe you could explain a little bit of.
Look, Brandon's design firm does a lot of label printing and printing in general. Yeah, see if you can.
Yeah, I'm punching in right there.
There's one thing that is 100% sure, is that a Cuban cigar, the wrapper, the box labeling will be perfect. Actually, in most cases, more perfect than the cigar, unfortunately. But that's a whole nother story. But the one thing these guys do is the printing is flawless.
So
that particular cigar.
So what you're saying here, and this is very important, you can see by the embossing, by the areas that are raised up, you can see if it matches up with the printing element itself. If you see at all that the embossing and the printing does not match up, they're off even slightly, 0.5 millimeter, walk away from it. Yep. Be safe and walk away from it.
The other thing is another telltale sign, and you guys have seen it a million times, and just go through your humidor right now and just look. These guys do a phenomenal job. We know who this factory is that's doing the Regis Black Label cigar. But the labels themselves, where they wrap it around and adhere that label, on a Cuban, they're going to be dead nuts perfect. Everything is going to line up perfectly. And when you see this particular cigar, now this one's not Cuban, but where the wrapper comes around and it meets this other side, it'll be off. Instead of being perfectly aligned, it will be off. That is a telltale sign. And a lot of times guys will show on asking for questions, how do I know if this Cohiba is fake? And a lot of times it's the dots. And one of the things that you can talk about is just a multi-pass pressing process where they have to print maybe 2 or 3 colors on the same piece of paper. If it's not perfectly lined up, in the case of a Cohiba where there's the head of the Tejano Indian, it actually was Fidel Castro's secretary, but that outline, that silhouette, the white border that will be around her head will be perfect. Then there's also a little border around that. It'll all be perfect spacing. But when you see the head is bleeding into it's taken the white out and it's kind of bled into the black, that's a sign. Now, a lot of people will look at it and go, no, I mean, on the checklist it says it's going to have a hologram on it, and it's got 3 dots above her head, and it'll have all that. That may be true, but then you have to really look at the print quality.
Yep, and we're talking print quality here, and that rolls beautifully into, what's up, Frank Tomaszewski? That rolls into what Sean Ratz is saying. Chris Pennington, and thank you to Chris and Ron Hancock, because they had one of the most unfortunate finds of any Cuban,
I think it's just beautiful.
Non-Cuban ever.
That is just such a beautiful thing.
Looks good, right?
That is the second label from a limited edition Cuban cigar.
Right. Okay.
And what's on the
now?
back?
Let's just say that's finding out it's fake too late. Right there, you'll be able to see. This actually has a Bolivar label printed on the back of a Cohiba secondary band.
Yeah.
This
ran
is
a sheet.
glorious.
It came through a little funky, and now
I hope
it
you guys
is.
can see that.
Yeah, it's now a lot of times they'll see the embossing or debossing of the label itself, and they'll think that gets a pass. But see how that label's not lined up perfectly where they made the connection. So
This one's somewhat close, except the dude looks like a lady.
that's
Yep.
not going to fly. But
So packaging is extremely important. Now let's talk about the cigar itself.
yeah. So typically a Cuban cigar is going to be relatively veiny, smaller, thin veins. But the one thing that is going to be exact is the cut of the foot is going to be laser sharp. This one looks like they cut it with a dull butter knife.
Yep.
And you can feel that. The other thing is with a box of Cubans open, you want to look and make sure that all of the cigars, they may not fit perfectly snug in the box, but they should be all exactly the same length. And then one of the other telltale signs is they typically will take, they'll go through and sort cigars. And they'll try to get the colors pretty consistent on the top rack. But if you take out cigars to the bottom rack, then all of a sudden it's starting to look like multiple shades of brown.
And you're saying that naturally with true Cubans?
True Cubans, it is very common to see cigars that are different colors on the second row of cigars.
Which really comes down to the overall performance of, like when you first open them, and then what the overall performance of their process is. And if you do get a box of Cubans, don't be surprised. Don't think they're fake just because they're not drawing.
Right.
Because we know that is, if you're in that 5 to 10% failure rate, that is perfectly acceptable.
It's perfectly acceptable to Habanos, which is the cartel. You'll see that label up in the top, Habanos. Habanos is the cartel that basically runs all Cuban cigars. Habanos doesn't actually make any cigars. It is the Cuban government that is taking control and taking their piece of everything that happens with Cuban cigars. Now, one of the things that you talked about is how is it possible to have a fake Cuban cigar in Cuba? So the fact is there are cigars down there that will have Cohiba labels. Typically, a guy is going to there's a couple of different stories that are pretty common, but the one when you're walking on the streets in Cuba, I know the one you're going to tell. But the one when you're walking on the streets in Cuba is, hey, come down here. One of the best rollers in the history of Cohiba lives right down here at the end of the street. And we can go in his house because what the government does for a pension is they pay him in raw tobacco, and then he rolls his own cigars and sells them to tourists. They all mysteriously have Cohiba labels on them instead of, not having a label on it at all. But they all have these labels on them, and they're basically they're making a connection with somebody at the factory and buying the shredded scraps of just crap.
And actually, Brent Cunningham sent us a video that actually had a nut, like a bolt-in nut, and the cap of the cigar itself. I mean, it's literally, when people say floor scraps, some of it is
floor scraps. The best things that I've pulled, I pulled a staple out of one.
Yeah, there it is. There it is. That's the one.
That's the other one.
The number one way to get duped, if you have anything that you take anything away from this, if you're interested in purchasing Cuban cigars, here's the one that will tell you it's a fake. My cousin works at the factory, or my best friend, he actually works on the floor. And so these boxes, they don't, the serial numbers don't match up with the cigars themselves. But trust me, it's because he was able to pull them aside. These are from the floor.
Yeah.
The most common way to be duped, we've seen it personally here.
So in Cuba, as you walk through the factories, if somebody convinces you to follow them to the bathroom and buy 3 cigars off the floor for $20 cash, which they will try that. But if they are caught, or if they're turned in, they get 2 years in prison. You don't go to a judge. They just take you to prison. So that's if you try to sell somebody a Cuban cigar off the floor. Mm-hmm. So the fact that their brother's best friend's cousin's neighbor that works on the floor stole boxes out of the factory, that's like death penalty shit. And that's no joke. You can get thrown in jail in Cuba if you, for 5 years in prison, if you look like you're going to break the law. Yeah.
How wild is that?
Noel Roja and a friend of his, that when they were in Cuba, they went to a meat packing plant, and just to help feed their family, they took the bones, so they had the marrow. They took the bones and got caught. His friend did 5 years, and Noel was in, but was let out, I think, after a year.
A year
for being marrow. Caught for taking bones that were in the trash. Yeah, it's no joke. And when you're when Oliver was there was this gal that was dressed up, almost looked like she would be a stripper coming to a party in a police outfit. And so Oliver goes up to her, "Hey, how you doing?" So, "Hey, can I get my picture?" And she just looked at him and goes, "Keep walking," because he was that close to taking a trip downtown. Well, and there's no coming back from that. You're not going to a judge.
And Nelson was thrown in prison during the revolution. He was, and he still feels as though the revolution is going on.
Right. And Nelson Alfonso is the owner of Atabey. He's from Cuba. He was thrown in as what did they call it? It was like a societal combatant.
Okay.
But basically, he challenged the government on why they would allow Spain to have Cuban cigars when it was the Spanish that annihilated the Taino Indian population on Cuba. They wiped them out, just murdered them. So why should we sell Cuban cigars today to them? And he was thrown in. He was called a political combatant. And what's interesting is when a political combatant gets thrown in prison with the murderers and everybody else, they shave their eyebrows so that they know that that guy over there was fighting for the people, and they're left alone.
So it's a good thing to have your
eyebrows. It's a good thing to have your eyebrows shaved.
In Cuba. Wow.
Yeah.
That is just that's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And we circle back to some of the cigars. Thank you for everyone who's joining us now. This is Cigars 101. We do it every Tuesday. Should we bring in a little guest here?
We could.
And talk some nonsense and quiz him and see if he can pick out fakes or reals.
Well, that's gonna be, if it's in here, yeah, that's fine.
Let's do it. Give it up. This is Busy B. Busy B, come on in. Bring your chair.
Picking out fakes and reals. I don't know what a cigar is, and they got the label on it.
We're about to find out.
Oh God. All
right. Elaborate on some other great non-Cohiba brands, like the Cuo Dulce is good, and Trinidad. What are your personal favorites? Scott, that's a great question. There's a number of great Cuban brands out there. I'll tell you, the one thing that was Probably the only real letdown that I had in Cuba was having the opportunity to kind of see how the sausage was made. And it's the same letdown you get when you find out what the ingredients are in bologna. But in the case of Cuban cigars, we went to Cuba Tabac, which is the government-run factory. So basically, all cigars except for Cohiba, Trinidad, Partagas, and I think the Osei was actually made at that factory, but Hoya, Punch, Monte Cristo, all of those are made at that factory. There are 5 floors, maybe 200 rollers on each floor, and that cigar factory makes 1 cigar. And if you think there's a difference between a Punch and a Hoya and a Monte Cristo number 2, you're just mistaken. That factory makes 1 cigar. That when I walked into a room that obviously they didn't see a lot of people, because when we opened the door, we had a full access pass. When we opened the door, these people hadn't seen people for a long time, literally. And then a couple of big white Americans walking in kind of threw things off a little bit. But we went up and watched this girl. There was 2 sitting right here, and one was putting Punch labels on, and one was putting Hoya de Monterey Epicure number 2 labels on, and they were pulling from the same bin and putting labels on it. When you go around the factory, you've been to the factories in Nicaragua, there's always some indicator of the color of the trays or something that denotes the different manufacturer cigars that are being made at those factories. That factory makes 1 cigar, and that's it. They're all different shapes, but when I went in the box room, it was like, today is Monte Cristo, or today is Torpedo Day. So they had Monte number 2s, they had Punch number 2s, they had Hoya number 2s, and they just start filling it. And that's a box of Monte Cristos, but having an entire box full of Hoyas.
Yep, and actually, Darren, that's actually quite, imagine this. It's very common. Now, we say that the external packaging is stellar, and the packaging production is unbelievable. However, underneath your Vista, underneath this element here, if you take this off, there is a decent chance you'll see another brand's label underneath this on your lid.
Yep.
And that doesn't mean it's real or fake. That very well means it's real. It's just you'll know what factory it's from.
Right.
Busy Bee, what's up? You're looking all Wesley Snipes in this. I think we need some more light.
They actually said they're watching Happy Gilmore in the lounge out there, and they said I looked like Happy Gilmore's coach if I just had a Kangol on. I got my Carl Weathers on today.
Nice.
Biz, have you smoked Cubans, true Cubans? Have you smoked fake Cubans?
I have no idea. I've had, in the last month, 4 Cubans, and what do? Every time I get one, I text both of you.
Yeah.
I like, is this real? So I have a Monte Cristo number 2 in the humidor right now that a good friend gave me. DJ his wedding back on me, says, man, I got to give this to you. I said, thank you. As soon as he wasn't looking, I took a picture of it, and I sent it straight to y'all. Like, what is this? Is it real or is it
You
fake?
had, well, there was one you sent me that had 2 or 3.
I had 2 of them on there.
And one looked real. I think the other one was a Kardashian for sure.
Well, close.
It was close.
I think there was one that was, I think I just said it was suspect.
Right.
There was one that was close. So if you look at a cigar, before you snap it, if somebody gives you a Cuban, what are some things that you're looking for?
I look at the label. That's why I mean, the label to me tells everything, because even looking like, being that's what we do, the perfection of the label, how it's cut, even if I look at this one where it's kind of cut off at the bottom, I don't know if that's a big deal or not.
That's a big deal.
That's a big
Exactly. So it's like fake Jordans or a fake Rolex. There's always a little something that gives it away. Now, when it comes to smoking it and all that jazz, I wouldn't even have a clue. I couldn't tell you what the hell it is, but this is what gives it away for me.
Yep. Actually, here is what this label's supposed to look like. To give you all an idea of what a real Cuban versus a fake Cuban. Remember, this is what a fake Cuban Cohiba label is.
If you look at the bottom, it looks like my son had a paper cutter.
How much can you zoom in, Brad?
I can zoom in pretty decent. Where are you?
This is
hold that thing up there.
That's a better.
Wait till you see the the Tejanos Indian face.
Okay, give that a little bit of left to right. Boom, boom. Okay, that looks good. Back out. Now show them the fake one.
This is the fake one.
Oh, that's the fake
This
one.
is the
This
real.
is the real one.
You'll see the hologram. You'll see hologram around the top and the bottom. You'll see the Cohiba fits inside the box perfectly.
And good.
You'll see how the Cuba is perfectly centered. Now, this one. Gold and the white line up, or don't line up. I want to try to get this.
Yeah, we'll snap photos and post them up so you guys can see it afterwards.
Side by side.
Yes, we will do that. But this one is so far off that you might be able to see it.
And out. So one thing that, Pops, you were mentioning, and here's an important thing. When you look at the foil that Cubans use, particularly with the Cohiba, when you look at this, it's just gold foil.
It's flat. It's not robust.
It's just foil, right? But if you look at the real one, it's going to have holographic gold foil to it. You'll actually see the logo that is ghosted inside of the foil itself. Very, very important.
So let's talk about some of the. Now, there's two other things to look at on the cigar itself. Number one, if it's a traditional, not a torpedo, but if it's a traditional cap, it will have 3 caps. You'll see actually 3 different cap lines. Most of the Nicaraguan and Dominican cigars have 2 caps. So you'll see the lines differentiated, and they'll carry it down. There'll be another one. There'll be another one. Cuban cigars do 3 caps. Atabey does 3 caps. There's some product that's available in the States that will do 3 caps, typically higher end product. But 3 caps, and then the other thing is an absolute pristine cut on the foot, and all of the cigars in that box will be the exact same length.
Now, let's say you do have someone standing in front of you. You're standing in a lounge, or you're standing somewhere looking at buying a box. Talk a little bit about something that Biz could do that would maybe get somebody to shake in their shoes a little bit, knowing that you could check if they're real cigars or not. Yeah,
there's several things you can look at on the outside of the box before you open the box, but the first thing that I would do if I'm going to look at it, I'm not as much going to look at the label itself unless I'm looking at a Cohiba. The first thing I'm going to look at is how are the labels lined up. If the labels don't line up perfect, like this was the real, this is the real one, and the label itself will line up perfect. If it's not, it'll line up out of whack because they'll just stick it together and they won't be perfect. So I would take that cigar and rotate it and go, like this one, I don't think this is real.
Yep.
So
can you see the difference on that, Biz?
If you look at where that label is joined,
it's off.
Yep.
It's off.
Yep.
By a lot. Looked like I did it.
That's some people who are putting labels on probably have as much experience as we do.
Let me ask you this. What makes a Cuban cigar so valuable, so sought after? So anybody that gets, cause everybody brags about, is it the embargo? Is it because we can't get, is that what makes this such a big deal?
Yeah, you can't get it.
100%. It's, people want it because they can't have it. When they smoke it, they convince themselves it is the best thing that they've ever smoked in their life. Some people will talk about their experience with the Cuban cigars. When I smoked it, I was just green. Now, there's a reason for that. And we've talked about the fermentation process and how the tobacco will start to have that chemical reaction at 12 months to 18 months, and it will go through that sick period. They'll put tobacco into production out of the barn. So at 4, 5, 6 months, they'll roll that cigar. It hasn't even gotten sick yet. So you get a cigar, it's kind of tight, and you're pulling on it real hard, and you're sucking in ammonia, yeah, you're going to have a green experience. And that's a real cigar. That's a real Cuban.
And so the one thing that you're going to see as well, because you're talking about fermentation, right? Mm-hmm. Let's say you fire it up. Here's the one thing that you're going to notice is Cubans have very dark ashes.
Okay.
And the reason why it's dark is because tobacco that has not undergone its complete fermentation and aging process is not going to get super white. The whiter the ash, the better fermented the tobacco is.
Right.
So you'll see with that, it's a very light ash on the front. On this, it's all very light ashes. With the Cuban, it is very dark. Very dark. And that is actually a telltale sign you're on to a real one.
So now, if it's fake, how deep does the fakeness go? This is not Cuban tobacco? It's not.
It could be Cuban tobacco, but the thing is they roll the cigar, they cut off the scraps, they throw the scraps in a box.
So it's bologna.
Well, it is bologna. And it's literally swept up off the floor. That's not cleaned up or filtered out or anything. And we're going to cut this one open and see what this one is all about.
You know what? I wonder if we should. Nah, we don't need to do long leaf short. I don't want to kill a principle here. All right, so let's murder. Make sure to be knife side towards busy.
Okay.
So this way, we're gonna.
Man, this one just slid right through.
If any beetles come running out, I'll catch them in my hand.
Okay, so the experience, what we want to see is just layers and layers and layers of round to full long leaf tobacco that's all been put together.
Correct.
Right? So we've got some long leaf. We got this is actually
that's actually pretty
mostly
good.
Long leaf.
Yeah.
Now, there are some shreds. There's this stuff. But we have opened up cigars where we go through the binder and the whole filler is like pipe tobacco. And that is Cuban, but it's scraps that have been shredded.
Well, and to answer your question even furthermore, it doesn't mean it's Cuban tobacco as well, because what Edgar mentioned is something that turned him off on some certain different manufacturers is they'll sell the tobacco to Cubans, export it to Cuba, and they utilize some Mexican tobacco for fake Cubans. Now, coming from the farm that it comes from, it's pretty damn good tobacco. So you could get in, maybe it's better to buy a $4 fake Cuban than it is to buy a $30 real Cuban. You just never really know.
Yeah, so I would say about 25% of this cigar here is that. There are cigars that are
Chris is
80.
over there. He was saying, that's the real one. That's the real one.
That's about
thanks
80.
for letting us murder one of your cigars. Shout out to Chris Pennington for giving us one of the cigars.
Yeah, look at the quality Maduro wrapper here. Not so much.
Toilet paper.
Very, very thin. But yeah, we've had some cigars that are more shredded, junk, garbage, trash. But yeah, I've pulled the Wonder Bread twist tie, Staples, things like that out.
Let's take a stop for just a second, because I think we're doing really a solid job of outlining some of the Cubans and going through that. Let's take a sidestep and talk about some of the cigars that emulate Cuban tobacco, Cuban flavor palettes, and how would you describe a Cuban flavor palette before we get into some of those cigars? And then once Biz has a good idea what some of his cigars
I've noticed that the ones I've smoked have all been lighter. Because I like a more full-bodied, richer, nice cigar, but all the ones that hopefully they were real, they were more a lighter, airy taste. Not airy, but it's just a lighter on your palate cigar, smooth. They weren't bad, nothing wrong with them. It's not my ball of wax, but I guess it's the whole thing, the mentality of everybody's so caught up on what's on the label that sometimes I don't even think they even give a damn what they're smoking, as long as the label's presented and they think they're cool.
Yeah. Well, the one of the things that came up earlier, what are some of the great brands? Trinidad is a great brand. There's a number of cigars out there that are, but overall, from a flavor perspective, they're all somewhat similar in the same, if it was a flavor wheel there, they would all kind of sit in the same area, and there's one distinctive note that comes out of a Cuban cigar, and that is hay. That dry hay flavor you would get if you walked into a barn full of hay, that is very, very prevalent. It's a very unique flavor. And a lot of that comes from the fact that the pH in the soil in Cuba is very different. And there's a lot of salt water and everything else that's sitting on top of that soil. And it's just very, very unique part of the world that particular tobacco goes in. That gives it that flavor. But it is mild. I think that's why a lot of people in general like it, because it is a pretty mild cigar.
Instead of smoking a Cuban at $20, $30, $40, what would you recommend someone smoke that would emulate that flavor, give a better experience, and also save some cash?
To save some cash, whenever anybody asks for a Cuban cigar here at the store, I put them into a Regis Black Label. This cigar is actually made in Nicaragua by our friends at Plasencia. It just goes to show you, when you put the right tobacco in the hands of a good roller, they can make a Nicaraguan tobaccoed cigar taste like a Cuban cigar, taste like a Dominican cigar. But this cigar, this is the Orchid, which is a limited edition cigar, but one of my absolute favorites. And this reminds me of pre-2012 Cubans. And the reason I say pre-2012 is because prior to 2012, the Soviets were subsidizing Cuba. So they had money for fertilizers and for irrigation and all those things. They shut that off. Then in comes Venezuela. Venezuela, right now, the money we got in our pocket is more than they have in Venezuela for the whole country, with exception of Maduro, the owner, or the owner.
That's the best way to put it.
The owner of Venezuela. He's got all the money. But Venezuela took over and has really killed their ability to be consistent with their farming. And so getting crops, they went 1 year, there was one field that was just known for its super elegant wrapper. And it was in Cigar Aficionado. A guy was standing in the field, looked like it had like 30 weeds behind him.
Wow.
That was it. So,
what are some cigars that you, after smoking some Cubans, that you would recommend people take a look at that may give you that similar experience?
The one that Pops is smoking, definitely. That's hard for me because I don't never smoke anything that mild. I mean,
you were talking about money. On the other end of the spectrum is an Atabey. I think Atabey.
I didn't want to say that one because you said save money. Because Atabey, hands down, that is the same experience, a lot better. But if you want to say in that wheelhouse, that would be the closest thing.
Let's be honest. If you're buying a $100, if you give me an option to buy a $100 Vejique, 120, 140, or 3 Atabeys, I'm gonna take 3 Atabeys. Having experienced all long. And we not long ago we smoked a Vejique, and they're very, very, very good cigars. But here's the reason why you want to look into more, we'll call them domestic cigars you can buy domestically. Main reason is the market that it goes to, Europe. You're not going to see a bunch of people sending food back because the European market is just, give me what I get. And they've had Cuban cigars. You'll find in the American market, for those who have worked in the food service, they like it a certain way. We like what we pay for. And in this, it translates very well because the Dominican Republic, Honduras, Nicaragua, and really some of the top producing countries have been forced to produce for the American market. And the way that changes out is the quality and consistency is number 1 and number 2 most important items. So if you buy a box of 20, then, in case in point, a gentleman out front bought a box of Patoros, and one didn't smoke right, and the next one he was having a little bit of funk, and we're going to swap it out for him.
Right.
Because that's unacceptable in this market. So it's
one of the events that at night at the Habanos Festival, I got to sit with the vice president of Habanos. And he was very curious because someday they're going to cut a deal with the United States in order for us to be able to sell Cuban cigars. And he asked me, as a cigar store owner, what do you think would happen if Cuban cigars were available today?
That was my next question.
And I was
next question.
What do you think?
I don't think it would be as big of a deal. Because number one, it's just all about perception. If I can't have it, so I got to get it. But in a competitive market, and if that was so let's say if they were available for 5 years, let's give it enough time to get into it. So if a Cuban cigar could sit in that humidor next to all the rest of them, I do not think it would be as big as of a deal as it is.
I asked the guy if he wanted me to be honest, and he said, absolutely. I said, I think that the lines would be out the front door the first 6 months. People would find out that Cubans are available, they would be in and buy them, they would smoke them, and they would go,
this is it?
And it's gonna go like this, and it's gonna go like this. And he goes, that's what we're afraid of. So I said, he goes, where do you think our challenge is? I said, today, that particular day, we smoked like 6 or 7 cigars at this 500-year-old, it was like a hotel, and it was unbelievable. We sat there and smoked these cigars. There were 3 full cigars in the ashtray by the time we got done because we couldn't take a draw. Literally couldn't take a draw. And I said, what percentage of the cigars in the box that don't perform is acceptable? And he said, in a box of 25, 5 to 7 cigars. I go, if you come to the United States, people buy 25, they want 25 to work. And he goes, huh. Like that was news to him. So
5 to 7 out of 25.
5 to 7 out of 25, not smokable.
So it's kind of the same effect that I've learned now with certain bourbons and whiskeys that are super mega high dollar because the manufacturer makes them rare. And they're not even that big of a deal once you get a bottle. It's like, okay, this is it, but I can't find it in shelves. So when they get them, they pump up the price, and now it's this huge.
Well, and you start to see secondary markets.
Yeah.
They do a great job of grooming and creating secondary markets. And that's where I think it goes into what you were saying earlier, is purchasing cigars from other online reputable or online sources.
Right.
What are some of the things that you would say to somebody?
There's 2 things. There's number one, and I think in the end, the main thing we want to do is hit on some of the key points on the box. That's where you might want to take some notes. And we'll talk about the 6 or 7 indicators that will, before you even look at a cigar, that you can tell the owner, bafangu. But there's 2 things that I want you to pay attention to on this particular thing. Number 1 lesson, don't trust duty free. People think stuff at duty free is real. Duty free in the United States, that may be the case. But on the front of every box has to be a tax stamp. And the tax stamp has to have a hologram on it, has to have a serial number on it, has to be specifically placed on the box just like this. But in a cabinet in Mexico, we stopped there on the cruise, in the cabinet I grabbed some of these stickers. They're fake tax stamps. These aren't even cut right. See how they're not cut right?
Yeah.
So, and it's very light green. But this is a fake sticker, Cuban sticker. I pulled it out of the cigar cabinet at the duty free in Mexico. That's where I stole this from. So that is one thing. The other thing is, so number 2 is 25 cigars. You guys are math majors, I'm not. 25 cigars times $22, minimum cheapest price you're gonna get it. $22 a stick times 25 equals
$4.10.
a lot of money.
I don't know. I really don't know.
So here's what these online guys are saying. We're going to ship you the cigars in the boxes. If they get caught in customs, we'll send you another box free. Well, I call bullshit on that because no one's going to send you another $400 box of cigars and take a chance of it getting stuck in customs.
Because this is worth reiterating. This is not a business that has good margins. Mm-hmm. This is not a business where you're selling Red Bulls that cost you 2 cents for $3.
Right.
That is not what this is. This is an artisan product. The margins are not there to be able to give them out. Whether your cousin works on the factory floor or not, there is no cheap way of producing these and creating these and being able to just give and give.
Yeah.
Because we see this, and you principal lovers will know this, because about 70 of our cigars were caught by customs and chopped with
in half.
machete. And that happens often. If they see cigars, they're going to sacrifice at least a bundle of those. So if you send this across, chances are it's going to get checked out.
Yep. And if it's from a source where it's, CubanCigars.com and they're coming into the United States and it gets into customs and they scan it and they see cigars in there, they're going to either take it, keep it, destroy it, or whatever the case may be. So the odds are they're going to get caught. Now, I have access to a group in St. Martin. It is a Habanos authorized dealer. We've been there. He's got the real deal stuff. He has his daughters, Vinod, pulls the labels off the cigars and snail mails those to you. You don't get the box. They take the cigars without labels and stick them inside of a cellophane or inside of a hard plastic bag, zip it shut with a Dominican label inside of it. Then, when they get caught at customs, which they did, we bought a bunch of them a couple years ago, they got caught at customs. Customs wants to know the factory of origin so they can call them. So Vinod has a deal with a factory in the Dominican that verifies that these cigars came from there.
Wow.
That's how they get there.
Super shady.
So that's how you get a real cigar here. If you're getting a box of these and they're promising you that if they don't get through, they're going to give you another box for free, big red flag. Because here's what they're thinking. What's the guy? Look at Busy. You're not going to mess with Busy. What's he going to do? Come get me? In Switzerland? Well, I would. I'd go to Switzerland.
Yeah.
But when those guys shit, if a bunch of guys start walking their door going, hey, which one of you guys sold me this? I want to talk to you about that. But so that's something to be very, very cautious of. And a lot of these guys convince themselves that that's the case. The other thing, too, is a lot of people don't realize, while Monty number 2 is $22, pretty much 22 to 26, depending on where you're getting them at. In Mexico, it's higher because they have over 100% tobacco tax. The simple fact of the matter is, in Cuba, all of the mainstream cigars are $5 to $7. So in U.S.,
you can actually purchase them while you're there.
Yeah,
but you can't bring them back over there, right?
You can bring them back, and in theory, it's unlimited. But in theory, anything over 2 or 3 boxes, if you get caught with them at the gate, some custom agent's going to take them. They'll let you have 2, or they'll let you have 1, but to try to get through with a bunch, no go.
I'm curious, for those who are watching, who enjoys smoking Cuban cigars, who knows a little bit about them, who prefers to smoke something other than Cuban. I'm curious.
Well, Sean is talking about, Cubans are great, but I'm smoking the house stick. And the house stick kind of falls in that same lane from a strength perspective. Here's the interesting thing, too. Cuba has pre-sold at the beginning of the year 101 million cigars. 101 million. Their government says they sell 280 million. The 100 million they export, and then the population of Cuba smokes the rest. We all know that's not the case.
180 million.
They can't afford it, but it just doesn't happen. But anyway, 101 million cigars. They grow enough tobacco to make about 90 million. So that's how much tobacco is coming into the United States from other countries in order for them just to fill their orders.
For an additional 11 million cigars per year.
Right.
Just to meet demand.
Just to meet the orders they're booked at the beginning of the year, and then that's it. Yeah.
11 million cigars is...
That's a lot of tobacco from Mexico, the Dominican. Now, you buy a Nicaraguan cigar, and it'll say it has a little Dominican filler and a little U.S. Pennsylvania broadleaf, and it has a little bit of this. This, they all say it's Cuban tobacco.
So let's put that in a perspective. Let's put that in a real numbers perspective. Everyone is familiar with the Cuba. Mm-hmm. Everyone who doesn't smoke cigars is familiar with Cuba. Yep. That's the #1 selling cigar in the world.
Right.
And they have gobs of tobacco for that, right? They sell 9 million Cubas per month. So think about every single gas station you have gone to in the past 10 years in the United States sells this cigar. Every single cigar lounge in the country sells this at the same time.
Yep.
Right? And all of that combined does about 9 million a month of everywhere in the United States.
Right.
Now they have to manufacture 11 million cigars per year out of thin air just to meet demand.
Right.
Think
Right.
about how
And
many cigars that
they
is.
could probably sell 200 million. They think that they would do 30 to 40 million the first year if they just sold it into the United States. So it's kind of an...
And those people who have been in our humidor know it's a pretty decently sized humidor. We have about 14,000 cigars in a pretty decently stocked humidor. How much space do you need for 9 million? And then that's what they need to manufacture.
Yeah, so one of the things, if you guys saw on Cigar Newbies, if you guys are on Cigar Newbies, if you're watching, you're not on Cigar Newbies, go into that group. But one of the things we talked about this week was beetles. It is notorious in these cigars. Most Nicaraguan Dominican cigar manufacturers freeze their cigars to kill the beetles that are inherent. They grow on, they'll take root on a plant and they'll just ride it out until they get 3 or 4 days of 80 degrees and 80% humidity, and then they come out and turn into termites. But in Cuba, the Cuba Tabac massive cooler door, I noticed that the digital temperature gauge wasn't working, and it wasn't a real tight fit, so I slid the door open, and it was just full of people rolling cigars. So the freezer, at some point, they probably intended to use it. It broke, so let's roll some more cigars. So they're not actually freezing cigars. So tip of the day is any Cubans that you get, put them in the freezer for 4 days minimum. Take them out of there, put them in the refrigerator for a day, let them come back, let them sit in your humidor, let them get acclimated, but kill the beetles because they will destroy the rest of your collection.
Let's take a pivot because that's a great sum of, if you are going to do it, here's what to do. But I want to take a quick change of pace because it's been informational and drinking from a fire hose.
Right.
I just want to hear from you guys, what has been your favorite cigar experience? I just want to hear, what were you smoking? What was the situation? And what did you take from it?
So damn many of them, man. Mine is going to be the Partagas at your house in the patio when we decided what we were going to do with our life. That was a year.
That's
2 years ago.
That's your most recent.
Not most recent, but that
What's
was
your
probably the
favorite
one.
most recent? That
Most
was
recent?
that was a transformational cigar. Right?
Yeah, that's
All
true.
right, so my stepfather just moved. My parents just moved here from Omaha, and he's not a cigar smoker. But I said, you know what? You're going to smoke with me. We're going to talk. And we actually sat out on the back patio. This was last night. I gave him. What did I give him? I eased him in. I gave him a nice little. He had a Crux Epicure.
Beautiful.
Something mild, something cool. What did I smoke? What did I get down? Oh, you know what I had? I had a lithium. I was actually on the
Jake Wyatt.
Jake Wyatt
Jake
lithium.
Wyatt.
And we just talked, and we ended up talking. I've known this man since I was 5 years old. So we ended up talking about when we were kids, when I was young, our relationship, how it's grown, that I'm grown up. But then he just stopped, and he said, shit, this is what you do? I said, at the end of the day, we have a drink, we sit on the back patio, we watch the moon come up.
Yeah, full moon last night.
It came up over the houses in the backyard, and light. It was just so perfect. And he says, I should have been doing this 10 years ago. And he just looked at the cigar, looked at everything, and he's like, this is how you end your day every day? I said, every day. You know, even when it's cold outside, I got fire table, heaters in, and just, it doesn't matter. And and the funny thing is he looked at the cigar, and he was just like, and he stopped smoking years ago, but a cigar is different than nasty ass cigarettes. And he was just like, he went to be, he literally said, I'm going to bed happy. He was cool. It wasn't the alcohol, it wasn't everything, it was just the conversation that the cigar experience bring out. This was just kind of the reason we were there. Mm-hmm. And I would probably say most recently last night.
That's incredible.
I think cigars allow people to open up and have deeper conversations. Mine is just, every week when we do the wind down, just to be able to live in the cigar for a while, chill out. And when we do the wind down and then afterwards we talk about the experience we had when we go 2 hours of just no talking, no devices, just music in the cigar. And it's amazing how deep people get into thought when they just relax. So
I would recommend that for anyone who is local. Join us on Wednesday for Wednesday Wind Down. We only have space for 7.
Yeah, about 7's comfortable.
About 7 per week. If you want to, just drop us a message and we'll put your name on the list.
It's androgynous. If you don't know the word androgynous, Google it. But that's exactly what it is. It's pretty dope.
So let's we're gonna have some of those great things coming in. Mark Meyer said his was having a cigar with his son. That I had a cigar with my sons, and look what happened. We have a cigar lounge. Yeah. So, but while you guys are thinking about some of those great things, I want to kind of give you the several check boxes to check on the box before we get too far away.
And with that, before he goes through there, for more information on this, if you want it written, there is a Cigars 101 full article that is on our website, industrialcigars.com. So everything you're going through is based on the 101 presentation.
The one that we had that had the list of...
Exactly.
So on there is actually a list of e-commerce sites that are known for fakes and those that are known for having real cigars. It does show some of the pictures side by side of the reals and the fakes. So one of the first cigars that we have is a Cohiba Esplendidos. It's one of the most popular. It's about a $775 box of cigars. There's a couple of things to look for on this particular box. Number one, the Cohiba and the Tejano Indian silhouette on here, you'll notice that the ink is not perfect. It's not centered. It's in a pretty bad way. So this particular box, you would notice that was going to be much better. The other thing is, now they'll always put their brand on the front of the cigars or on the front of the box, what is in this particular cigar. That's going to be perfectly centered. In this bottom part. It is not. Typically they'll have a button on the front of their label that will have like a Cohiba logo on it. I don't think this one does. It does not. But one of the things is to look at the bottom of the cigar box, and it's going to have Habanos, and it's going to have a label. This one, as you'll notice, like on this biz, that is basically like a rubber stamp that stamps that particular label on there. The fact is, on the bottom of a real Cuban box, you'll notice that it is much darker. Number one. Number two, they actually come up on the wood and press this with a heat stamp. Be embossed a little bit. On the bottom, it will also have, you'll notice this doesn't have any production date. There's nothing on the bottom of this box. On the bottom of this box, right here, you look for, there's 3 letters. The 3 letters represent the factory that they were made at. And then there's an abbreviation. This one is, I believe that's February of 2014 is when this particular box was made. So this one will have a stamp on it. This one also has a stamp on it. This actually was a great box that I got. This is also February. Actually, I take that back, April of 2009. So there was a couple of generations where this box was so old that they actually went over it with a new label, because the labels have kind of changed over time. But you're going to identify a couple of different things. One, in the top is going to be a Habanos that's going to have the letters DOP. This does not have any of that Habanos label wrapped around the corner in gold, and that is critical. At a point in time closer to current times, they actually put a very thin outline on that particular label. So that's one identifier pressed in on the bottom. The other thing is they're pretty accurate as it relates to putting the Cuban tax stamp. And you'll notice the top of the Cuban tax stamp, the corners are rounded. You'll notice that the fake Cuban label that I got first of all, is much, much lighter.
Perfectly square edged.
And it's a perfect square edge, and it's actually not a hologram. I've seen some that is just silver tape, but this is actually part of the label, this hologram at the top. So there, you could look at it and go, oh, it's got a tax stamp on it, and it's got this silver thing at the top, check. Well, that's not a real label. If they don't put a production date on it, it never happened. So that's something to look at. Looking to make sure that all of the text is perfectly lined up and centered, because that's one thing that they just will not make a mistake on. And when all else fails, if you're in a cigar lounge in pick a foreign country and they've got all these Cubans laying around, you go in and take a picture and zoom in on the serial number on the bottom of this, Habanos. I think it's Habanos. I think it's .com, but it's the Habanos website, and on that is an authenticity check. You enter in the serial number, and it will tell you what the box is. In this case, it was a Robusto Ramonolones. That serial number should come up and say that it's a Robusto Ramonolones. We had a guy that had a label that was real. Mm-hmm. We entered it in. It was a box of Monte Cristo number 2s, but it was a Romeo and Julieta Churchill sticker. So all they did was replicate an official sticker with an official serial number, but it wasn't the cigar that was in the box. Mm-hmm. So usually when guys post stuff up on Facebook and ask if it's real or not, I'll ask for the serial number. That's the quickest way to identify what's going on. But the Habanos sticker, like Brandon said, if you're in a store, make sure that they have not pre-opened that box, because that means they've probably pulled the stuff out. And then typically every box will have a sub-label that's underneath it. The cigars will fit in there tight because they actually put a wood spacer inside of the cigar box so that the cigars fit snug. I've taken some, if you just move the box around and you hear things rattling around, they don't rattle around. And that's another telltale sign.
So what I'm taking from this is being into Cubans is a pain in the ass. Am I hearing this? Am I hearing what you're hearing?
It's like owning a BMW. Did I say that? My bad.
Yeah, that's exactly. So if you like BMWs,
you like Cubans.
You might like Cubans. That might actually be the same.
Well, I just say that because I'm noticing, and like I said, from my perspective as a newbie, of the sense of belonging. It is the whole aura that is around the whole thing about a Cuban cigar. It's in television, it's in movies, it's when you go somewhere. You see, I got real Cubans, and everybody turns their heads and they think of that. But when you get down to it, is it really a good cigar? And like I said, the thing that's blowing my brains out is how much you're paying for the cigar that could or couldn't. It's a crapshoot.
Yep. And the final element to it is Pops?
Rice paper.
Rice paper.
So inside of every box of Habanos, they use a rice paper that has the Habano story on it. And typically, if they use just regular paper and you set it in the palm of your hand, it doesn't do anything. But when you take the rice paper and you set it in your hand, it'll curl. And that's a sign that they went to the extra mile to use the rice paper, whereas fakes will not. The most egregious offenders of where somebody really gets taken advantage of is a cigar called the Cohiba Bijique. It's a beautiful cigar made in a beautiful mansion in Cuba. That cigar is very, very widely sought after. The box and the label was created by Nelson Alfonso. Beautiful black lacquered box inside of a sleeve, inside of velvet, inside of another box. And these cigars sell for anywhere from $100 a stick or $1,000 a box to $2,000 or $3,000.
Right.
If you just want to, in fact, I had a guy that got a box of there was a local retailer that was selling Bijiques out his back door. And he was charging $700 for these boxes of Bijiques. And So when you spend $700, you want to believe that they're real. You've convinced yourself it's real, but things weren't all lining up. And the comment that came out was, "But everything is so real. How could they do this? How could they replicate this?" Go to Alibaba, type in Cohiba, Behike, or Cuban kit, or anything on Alibaba, and you can buy a complete starter set. All you need to do is find somebody to make you 10 $1 cigars, and you can get the box, the sleeve, the velvet, the outer box, tax, everything. You can buy those for about $16, $18 a box. You got $10 worth of cigars in there, and you're going to charge somebody $700. Wow. That's what happens. Shady. So these cigars are, if somebody pays $1, they paid way too much. And you put 25 of those in a box, you fake the rest of it. They got $4 or $5 in a box. They got $20 into cigars, and they sell it to you for more money than we ever would. So that's where you just have to be cautious. I know, like Noel, one of our guys, is a pilot, and he was going to fly to Cancun this week, and he's like, "What should I look for?" And my thing was, just get there, take pictures, send them back to us, and we'll let you know on the spot. And he's like, "You know what? Screw it. I'm just going to buy my cigars at ICC and be done with it."
Call it good. And with that, this is good job, Pops. You know your shit.
Sometimes.
Anytime I buy anything, I send it straight to them. Don't even light it. Don't smoke it. Like, tell me what I'm in for, and we're good to go.
It's just, you just don't want to see somebody getting taken. If you get an opportunity to smoke a real Cuban, do it. I've got plenty. I can get you connections so you can get real ones, no problem. But the thing is there are some cigars that are sitting on our shelf right now for $10 that, frankly, I would rather have than most any Cuban. Don't get me wrong, there are some great Cubans. Trinidad is a wonderful cigar. Their 50th anniversary, spectacular. But it's also in Cuba, that's a $20 cigar. So that means in the rest of the world, it's 4x that. So it's really, really, Pops is a beautiful human being. That's JP.
Nice, JP.
He's a nice
good
guy.
comment.
Yeah, it is a nice guy.
I just want to know the one-on-one we're going to talk about General MacArthur and his corncob pipe over here.
I got to learn pipes. I'm curious if anyone else smokes pipes.
Anybody? Yeah, we have this. Yeah, you want to talk about shifting gears? Here's the thing. We never had pipes in the 3.5 years that we've been open because we don't know it. So we're not going to sell something that we don't know, and we clearly didn't have enough drive to do it. So then we hire Tyler and Ted. These guys are like the head of the pipe nerd community in the DFW area. Then we find out that Tyler is like an all-world pipe maker.
Right. He is a true artisan.
He's a true artisan. So and get this, you think you have some cigars or I have some cigars in my humidor? He entered all of his pipe tobacco into this pipe tobacco database, and then it asks how many days a week do you smoke and how much do you smoke? And he 157 years. So what we're thinking about doing is offering some pipes, none of the crazy stuff, but doing some pipe 101s. That would be cool. And also there are some really rare tobaccos that we could get our hands on and really offer something that's unique versus just having what every briar shop has hanging around.
Flavored bubblegum stuff.
Yeah,
well, I think this though too, the pipe itself is a work of art. Pipes are just, I've seen beautiful, gorgeous in them, but that just in its own is just beautiful.
Pretty cool.
So Scott Cooley says we need a pipe class, pipe newbie here. I have not ever smoked a pipe other than just trying to take a hit. I don't know, what is it, a hit or a puff or what?
That's a different kind of pipe.
That one. Okay, yeah. So, but what I remembered was my grandpa smoked pipes, and I would, little kid, climb up on his little chair, and I'd grab his pipe and I would smell it, and that is what an Atabase smells like to me, and that's why it means so much to me to smoke that cigar. But if we did some pipes, would you guys have interest in a Pipe 101 because it would be led by Ted and Tyler, and those guys know more about that than I think we know about cigars.
They know a lot.
They know a lot.
So let us know if you're in on it. Thank you guys for your time. We appreciate the hell out of you. Thanks for coming and hanging with us on a Tuesday.
Hope you enjoyed the night. Hopefully you can get out and start traveling again so that you can go down and try